I want to say welcome to our final craft and teaching event of the winter quarter. Thank you all for being here on such a sunny Friday. It's been a pretty successful quarter so far. Our team won our cases and been pretty productive. A few things left. This quarter, there'll be one more blog post that should be up next week. So if you haven't come to our blog yet, to read from our alumni bloggers, please do. There's a link to it on the craft and teaching website. Some very productive stuff from young scholars who are entering the job world that hopefully will be entering very soon. And then information about the next quarter and the events therein should be up before the end of spring break. So keep an eye out on the website for updates and new information. We've got some exciting stuff coming. Check it out, and there'll be a lot more details to come. So, without further ado, I'll turn it over to Professor Rosengard to introduce our speaker this afternoon.
I'll take it over from Marshall, Mr. Cunningham. That's great. Thanks so much, and welcome to everyone. So one of the great things about having been around so long in so many roles is that you get to see people over time. And when I first met our speaker today, it was, I think, in December of 1991.
99.
And she was Miss Kensky from Sarah Lawrence College. She was sitting up there. Ms. It has to be Ms. Kensky. And now she is the McRae Professor at Coe College. And one of those people who's an associate professor with a name and hash, which is an impressive distinction. She is a very successful teacher, which is just a shock to me. I don't know. But also a very published scholar with a book with one of my favorite titles, Trying God, Trying Man. I love the double entendres in that. And work on Timothy, that's forthcoming, and articles and reviews and things, in addition to her teaching success, which she's going to tell you more about. I don't want to take a lot of time because I know that in addition to her presentation, she would like and we would like to have ample opportunity for discussion and conversation. But it is a great honor and pleasure to welcome you back, and I want to thank you for being here and for taking the time to endorse the program. So welcome and thanks.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. Like Dean Rosengard said, my name is Vera Kensky. I am in my 7th year of teaching at Coe College. Before coming to Coe, I taught 4 years at Lewis University half-time. So Lewis University is down in Romeoville. It's a Catholic regional comprehensive. And I taught there while I was finishing my degree here, while I was working on my proposal and writing my dissertation. And I said this in the morning session with the New Testament and Bible students. I remember every class I've ever taught, and I do not remember writing my dissertation at all. These experiences really leave their mark on you, for better or for worse. And sometimes we block out the things that we actually spend a lot of time. I thought what I would do today is talk a little bit about me and how my career to this point and what I've been tasked with and what I've been doing at Coe College. And then I have some materials to share to show you some of the different strategies that various liberal arts colleges, and I'm particularly familiar with liberal arts schools, have employed in designing their own curriculum in religious studies, and how that we've also developed certain strategies for doing so. And it's a really critical time to be in religious studies, as it's a time where students are very aware of the role of religion in this increasingly pluralistic America and an increasingly interconnected world. And at the same time, they are coming into the field with such radically different expectations of it, such radically different knowledge bases, and radically different skill levels. So it's a very exciting time to be in religious studies, but it's also a really difficult thing to do, is to teach religious studies, especially to emerging adults who are not quite adults, right? They may be legally adults, but they are not emotionally adults. And actually, that's not a term I made up. That's like an authentic new term, emerging adults. For this, there's a wonderful book called Lost in Transition about the rise of the rise of the emerging adults. And if any of you find yourself teaching at a school that is really undergraduate centric and I highly recommend reading it, so you can sort of see where students are. The recommended to be by much better than the student care stuff. I'm really reading. Sorry, I'm trying to be tall. It's really difficult. It's really difficult. It's also a very difficult time to be a religion for other reasons, which is that it seems to be the case that when a college is looking to consolidate a program, when they're looking to become more efficient or reduce curricular complexity, they often see religion as something that can go because people from other fields sort of work on it. So some colleges that have cut religion programs or cut lines in religion that we've been particularly affected by are Wartburg College, which is in our athletic conference. They cut 19 faculty positions last year across the disciplines, with a disproportionate number being cut in the humanities. Recently, Calvin College cut their Greek and Latin programs, which I found particularly distressing, knowing what the history of Calvin College. Buena Vista University, which is also in our athletic conference, they gutted both of their philosophy and religion programs, and yet they consolidated other programs and now have the School of Social Science and Religion, which is really frustrating since they have no religion faculty. Right? It's really, and do not offer religion programs. So I find that level of hubris, unfortunately, terrible. University of Northern Iowa, which is one of the three sort of publics in Iowa, cut their program. Western Illinois is considering right now cutting a religion program. College of St. Rose has cut their religion program. So Cal Berkeley last year, 10 state campuses, right? And other big name schools have cut their graduate programs in religion, which is not necessarily an indication that they're going to have their undergraduate programs in religion, but could lead to that, right? That is a sort of a danger sign, especially if they relied on their graduate program to provide teaching resources for their undergrads and now no longer have. So it's a scary time to be in religion and philosophy. My department chair, I teach in the Department of Philosophy and Religion. My department chair is an analytic philosopher, and he and I send emails to each other about our bait and tackle shop that we're going to open on an island in the Pacific Coast all the time. And it's sort of a gallows humor that takes effect. That is healthy but also serious. I mean, we feel the concern. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. A little bit about my time here at Divinity School, my job goals as I was where you are, preparing to go on the market, to move up the market, what I was looking for in school and what they were looking for in me, and then give you something about institutional growth. So I came into the DIV school as Rosengarten said in 1999. In fact, my colleague Ed Upton from Christ College of Valparaiso University was the very first person I met on the first day of orientation and remains one of my absolute favorite people to this day. So I came in 1999. I received my master's in 2001, and then I had been accepted into the PhD program here in New Testament, and it took me quite a significant time to go through the program. I didn't receive my PhD until 2009. In part, that was because of personal family things that get in the way of focus, right? And in part, that was because I spent so much time teaching. Well, what that meant is that when I was on the market, I was very hireable because I spent so much time teaching. And while I was here as a graduate student, I knew that I wanted to teach at a liberal arts school. People go to liberal arts college? Oh, only a couple of you, so me too. So liberal arts colleges are where real learning happens. In our intro to religion and the human sciences course taught by Tony Yu and Frank Reynolds, we had a guest lecture, which was a great experience. We had a guest lecture from Jonathan Z. Smith, who came in as we've been reading to take place, and he came in to talk about some of the stuff. And he said, I come to you from the college, where they learn something. And I usually, it was kind of like, whoa. But at the same time, it is where real learning happens because it's where the students are deliberately encouraged, invited, and even required to be moving around a flexible curriculum, to design an individual program, to build connections, to have small classroom conversations, to be involved in co-curricular activities that will enhance their own individualized learning. So it is a place where real learning happens, and I knew that it was transformative for me. I knew I wanted to be at a liberal arts college, and that was always my goal. And in thinking about even how I designed my exam structure, I specifically thought, if I'm at a small liberal arts college, I'm going to have to do a bunch of stuff. How can I make myself look, qualified to do all that stuff that I'm going to have to do? So while I'm taking, from the Bible program, I took Hebrew Bible, literature, New Testament literature, New Testament context, and then rather than doing what most of my friends did and take the History of Christianity exam, History of Christianity 1, I took History of Judaism 1. And so I was really exposed to a whole different kind of set of hermeneutical principles, a whole different set of texts, a whole different set of literature, and that made me especially attractive to people on the market who were really looking for that. Not only able to teach in a small class. I went on the market in the fall of 2008, right, which was a time in the market where everything happened. Right? I wasn't planning on going on the market that year, and my advisor, Hans Club, he said, "No, you're ready." And he said it in a German accent. He told me I was ready, I had enough rhythm, and that I should go on the market. And I'm so glad he told me that, because when I was on the market, I applied for 15 jobs out of more jobs that I could have applied for. I made a select choice of 15 jobs. I applied to almost entirely liberal arts colleges, with 2 exceptions for sentimental reasons. One near my partner's family in New York, and one in my hometown of Amos, Michigan. Everything else was a liberal arts college. I had 9 first-round interviews, which was really a response rate, so I was very happy. And I eventually, only one of those job searches was canceled, and I eventually had my sort of finalist at 3 places and had 2 offers. So I had a really successful time on the market. The following year, which is when my original target would have been to go on the market, there were 2 jobs in the entire market. That's what happened between 2008 and 2009. That's what happened. So I was very, very lucky to go on the market. And when I went on the market, I did a lot of research, as I'm sure you will too, about the individual profiles of the institutions that you're looking at. And so I could see who had a major, who had a minor, what was maybe looking to develop a major, what were the most popular majors at that institution, what their faculty looked like, what their curriculum looked like, etc. At Coe, which was kind of an ideal kind of place that I was looking at, because it's a liberal arts college within driving distance of Chicago, which is where my father was. So this is really great for me. They specifically asked me, when they called me to set up the initial interview, they specifically asked me to prepare certain questions, which is now a strategy that we do for all of our applicants. Because then we actually really learn, have a good sense of where this candidate is coming from, what they think should be done. They asked me to prepare questions about what a thriving religion program needs to look like, or should look like, in the context of a liberal arts college. And also about how I would design an introductory course in religion. Right? So I had really thought through several of these 2 questions. And especially, I know that they were very impressed with my instincts about what a thriving religion program means. And I focused on community, a sense that students are in it with each other, and they're having fun. They have peers. So cohort, a sense that something really hard but exciting was going on, and they were in on it, and other people were not in on it. Right? That kind of era of mystique, I think, a little bit really helps. My initial impressions when I came on my job interview to Coe, which is a school of about 1,450 undergraduates. It is located in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is the 2nd largest city in Iowa, with a population of about 140,000. So with several major industries located there, including agribusiness, engineering, and in communications, right? So and healthcare. Right? Healthcare is by far the #1 industry in Cedar Rapids. It used to be agriculture. With roads, etc. Now it's not. They have a mix of what I would call classic liberal arts programs and selected pre-professional programs taught in a liberal arts context. So some of our pre-professional programs that we have are business administration, which is the most popular major on campus, although the second most popular is psychology. And business administration, nursing. Some of my best students have been nursing students. They are tough. And education and public relations, basically. I may be missing it. Oh, athletic training. We're the #1 athletic training program in Iowa. And athletic training, those kids are serious. They are good at science. They love having them in classes. They really work hard. So I had done my research. My initial impressions came on my job interview was that there was no life in the department. So I'll give you an example. There were no students hanging around the building near the religion area at all. And when I went to my interview in the department, I love the faculty members that I met, most of them. When I went to my interview in the department, and everybody was in there about this, but everybody's door was shut. Right? So it was a real closed door atmosphere. Like, I didn't know that the senior professor of religion was in his office. I didn't know that. Like, this is an associate. I didn't know that because the door was shut. And it seemed so weird to me that he didn't come out to say hello. That was really weird. And that was something that I was like, this is dead. Right? It made it really feel dead. And then when I gave my job talk, we had a teaching demonstration, and none of the students asked any questions. There were only like 5 students in the room, and they were not engaged. They were really not engaged. And then when I sat down with them afterwards, my little like meet and greet, they were all immediately pulling out their like forms to fill out like while I was there about whether I was good, which is very weird. And I had to like really work overtime to try to engage them, which I was able to do. And so I was like, this is weird. This is a very strange environment. And so only over time did I really learn, what was going on, which is that there was no one was taking a co more than one class of religion. So they had no problem getting into the door, right? Coming in, taking intro, Western, New Testament, whatever. But they weren't staying. So there were moments where they actually quite good on the intro level, but they would not be good on any other level. And it took me, and what had happened is that they had a department where, they just felt that the 2 religion faculty were not kind of there was a disconnect between the 2 religion faculty that were there and the students that were co. And, my department chair, John, was very sure that this can't be because of co-students, because the predecessors to those people had a hugely lively department group of students. So they were looking for, what they decided to do, and this was actually really controversial when it happened, was they decided to not reappoint my predecessor at year 4. Right? That because the one faculty member was tenured, and there was very little they could do about that, they could do something about this. They thought if we move this person forward in year 4, we're saving the department. So they decided not to move the person forward. So I took the job at Co. And the idea that I could reach these kids. I could reach these kids. I felt I could. I felt like the students that I met outside the department seemed really lively. Like I definitely thought that there was life on campus. I enjoyed my tour guide. I really thought I could reach these kids. So I took the job. And I was still kind of leery because I'm like, what is this going to be like? Am I going to be able to do anything if the senior faculty member doesn't really want to change anything or is really resistant to making any innovations? And then I got a call. I was in my bathrobe. I remember this really specifically. Like I was coming out of the shower, I got a call, and it was my department chair, John Lemos, and he said, we've had some interesting news in the religion department. And I was like, okay, and I'm thinking this is where they rescind my offer. Right? That's what you think when you get this call, this kind of call. They're rescinding my offer. And what happened was that the senior faculty member of the department, who's now tenured in another institution, resigned. So I was going to be the only faculty member in religion my first year to come. Which I think he was very worried that I would pull out, that this was going to change, because at that point I hadn't signed my contract yet. This was still during the they felt an ethical responsibility to tell me this had happened before I signed my contract, which I really appreciated. So they were really worried that I was going to pull out, but to me this was fantastic news. Like you couldn't imagine how excited I was about this, because this is Queen's Lake. Now they're going into Queen's Lake territory, which so rarely happens in the world of higher education. It really, unless you're starting a brand new program, so rarely happens. And so I came in, and my partner was able to teach for us 4 classes, and then also we hired an adjunct from the University of Iowa in non-Western religions for the year while we were doing a search for a full-time person. And so we were able to start totally new. But what we discovered was that, we had to, one of us was together for was teaching an advanced course with 4 majors, because there were only 4 majors. He was teaching an advanced course with 4 majors, and none of them could do things that we thought you should have been trained to do at the elementary level. So none of them could do primary text analysis, right? None of them could do pick out an argument of a secondary source. None of them could break down a text into component parts, just basic things. So if you can't do that, you can't do anything, because those are the fundamental building skills of any more advanced work than that. So these kind of 4 students, and by the end of the year, one dropped out of college, one failed out of college, one just decided to not finish the major, just stay with a minor, and one survived, right? They were caught between administrations. But, when we were asked them, how does this text work? How is it structured? They said, well, no one's ever asked us to think about that before. That was very horrifying to us. So, what we started to do really was a kind of informal assessment. We informally assessed that. We don't need a rubric to do assessment. We informally assessed that. And so we were thinking about, even though I was the only full-time person, we were thinking about those intro classes and how can we really design these syllabi to make sure that they have these building block skills as they move forward in the curriculum. But we were also thinking about how can we get better students into this department. Because it's not just a question of more. You don't just want more students, although you do want more students, because numbers matter in this world. You want better students. We did not want to have a department that was filled with majors who were not interested in becoming scholars. And by scholars, I don't mean going to graduate school. I mean becoming emotionally invested and physically invested in the life of mine. Right? We did a couple of changes to the curriculum before I got there, in that we added some courses that I was going to be teaching. And some of the courses that we added, I thought were just so obviously undergraduate courses that I was kind of surprised that they didn't have it, for example. Of course, on religion in America, which didn't exist before I developed it. Of course, on synoptic gospels, letters of Paul. Yeah, these kind of building block courses just didn't exist. And so they were kind of working on this very kind of sparse curriculum that actually just didn't look that exciting. Right? And didn't look that interesting. So if you were a religion major, you're looking at the course listing, they just kind of look boring. Right? So why would you want to be a religion major if the course is so boring when you could go do cool stuff in anthropology, or classics, or history, or any other field? Right? So we started to employ some strategies to get better students. And one of the ones that we employed, which sounds counterintuitive to the beginning, is we increased the rigor of the courses. We increased the rigor of the courses so that when the students were in them, they had to work really hard. And that other students who wanted to be challenged would see those students working really hard, and then would come and start taking our courses. So we knew, for example, that there are certain degrees and certain majors at Co that are considered hard, and we wanted to be on that list. So philosophy was considered hard. They were doing fine with their students. We wanted to be as hard as philosophy, especially since we're in a joint department of philosophy and religion. We wanted to be as hard as physics. College has a world-renowned Center for Glass Research. It has one of the top undergraduate research programs in physics in the country. And it routinely sends students every year to top graduate programs in physics, material science, and engineering. And we wanted to be as tough as physics. Now, we knew we weren't going to be able to have a research lab with 50 students working in it. But we could at least make our courses hard. And what that does is increases buzz. You want to be buzz. You want to be buzz. You want people want to be where it's happening. We also had to develop, and I did, and then my new colleagues did, and we had to teach new courses constantly. In order so students kept taking courses in the department. Right? Because if you only offer the same things all the time, students are only going to be able to take one thing per semester in your department, and it may not be what they want to be taking anyway, and then your department is dead. The department is dead. So we were constantly trying to figure out how to develop new courses, what kinds of courses. We were really attentive to what students wanted to take or what we thought they should take. So for example, there's no course on our books on Protestant Reformation, right? But we were like, no, students need to know more about the Protestant Reformation than they know right now. And so we were like, we need a topics course on the Protestant Reformation. So we made that happen. And when you can get in your curriculum, like we've managed to do, topics courses not only at the advanced level, but also at the intermediate level. This gives you a ton of flexibility to try new things, to invite someone from outside the department to teach in the department for a course, to respond to student needs, wants, and interests, and to have fun. Right? So this year, for example, several students came to me and said, why don't you ever teach Job? Why don't you ever teach Job? And I'm like, well, I just don't really have time in my schedule to teach Job, and I can't put it into the Bible class because it's too hard, and I taught it in my first year seminar, but none of you took that first year seminar. And so I said, I'll tell you what, you get me 5 students to sign up. I'll teach Job next year as an intermediate topics course. And they didn't really believe me that I said I would do that. But so when I was able to be like, hey, guess what, Anthony? Job, 200 level next spring. He like freaked out with excitement, right? And that's really exciting, not just to students in our department, not just to religion students, but to students in English, to students in philosophy, and we hope to students in humanities conceived more broadly. So I'm really looking forward to that. That has 100 prerequisites. Right? So we couldn't have done that before I came because we didn't have a 200 level topics. Right? We would have had to teach it on the 300 level, which meant there would have been prerequisites. Students would have thought, I can't take that, it looks too hard. We would have had to teach it at a very advanced level. So building that kind of topical course into your curriculum is very, very worthwhile. But you have to teach new courses in philosophy. So over the past, I was just looking at my tenure letter that I wrote last year. Over the past, at that point, 6 years, right, when I wrote the letter, 5.5 really, when I wrote the letter, I prepared and taught 17 discrete courses at the college, both inside and outside the department. I taught most of my courses inside the department, but I also taught an honors seminar. I taught 2 different distinct first-year seminars. I taught very widely. And not all those courses are on my regular rotation, right? Some of those courses come up once every 4 years, right? For some of those courses, I've taught once and have not yet taught again. Right? But I prepared and taught 17 discrete courses. And what that means is that students, like if they liked Rise of Christianity, they'll love Augustine, right? And you can get students excited in one class to take another class. And that builds, you get the students that you want in those upper level classes because they also have prerequisite knowledge, or not prerequisite knowledge, but some foundational knowledge that really makes those classes soar. We also target students directly. And I do the most of this, but my colleague in Western religions, who's a Buddhism scholar out of the University of Virginia, he's wonderful. He especially is working with Asian studies students and targets them. We target students directly. If we see you in one of our classes and you write a killer paper, I'm going to ask you to come meet with me to talk about how great your paper was and have you ever thought about adding a major of minor religion to your program. And you know what? They just haven't thought about it. It never occurred to them that they could do that. Also, they might be taking your course by such accidental circumstances that if you don't say anything, they'll just be like, that was a cool class, and then they'll just walk off and get their really good degree in history, or whatever. Or math. Right? One of our most successful alums has been accepted into 3 PhD programs after doing a master's at Vanderbilt. He was a math major who I targeted. I targeted him. I said, you're a religion major. And he said, I don't know. And then the next semester he came back and said, I'm a religion major. And I said, I know. I know. And when you see it, you have to actually really stretch out the hand and offer. Because they honestly are not thinking about it. And we've attempted to cross-list, and we do not have an institutional culture in cross-listing. Now, you in Chicago have a really strong institutional culture of cross-listing. So that is something that is amazing that you can take real advantage of. We don't, but we managed to get 1 course in Dante crossed with English. And that brings in English students into our department every other year when that course is taught. And those students take 4 courses in religion. First of all, everyone loves reading Dante. It's a great course. Dr. Number is very funny. I think that's fair. It's very funny and smart. And they are like, hey, this is cool. This is not scary. This is not Sunday school. I can take another course in religion. So cross-list if you can. And also you can informally cross. Like I have a colleague in sociology who teaches sociology and religion. And when she has students, when she knows that she's going to be teaching sociology and religion, she tells me so that I can suggest it to my students so that helps them with their social science department, but also really helps them in terms of being a curricular value, right? And then she will tell her students, you know, if you actually want to really understand the sociology of religion, you should take Penn State's Religion and America course, right? And so we have this great exchange that really is an informal cross-class. Even just bringing in guest speakers from outside of your own silo on campus can really be helpful. And collaborating with programs to bring in guest speakers from outside that target double audiences is really an exciting way to bring community. So we took advantage of Ed's willingness to come out to Co, and he gave a talk for both the English students and religion students on C.S. Eliot, on religion C.S. Eliot, and that was great. And it was really cool because the religion students didn't really know the English students, and they were all in a conversation together. So that's the kind of thing you can do informally, even if your institutional culture is not crossless, or if your software won't let you crossless, which is also very frustrating to be software driven. You also have to really do a hard, so one of the things that we've done is we really had to work very hard to put our classes on faculty radar, on the radar of other faculty. So co-faculty are super overworked. We teach at 3-3, we're all on like a million committees, we're all doing a million things, we all have advising. You know, it's not the case that everybody knows everything else that is being offered at college. So one of the things that I do, if I know that I'm teaching a course that I think our history major should take, someone in our department is teaching a course that our history major should take, I will email or call, because we're friends, you know, share our history, and I'll be like, hey, just FYI, we're teaching this history of Christian thought class, your students would really benefit from it. Oh, great. Because now when they're meeting with an art history student, they might say, hey, did you know that this is being offered? Because our students also, we don't have the type of students that pours over the course catalog. Like, they don't know. We have to get their courses onto other faculty's radar. And we also started, when I first got here, we started hosting gatherings, which of course is something everybody should do. But rather than hosting them in like a cool room in the library or hosting them in a classroom, we hosted them in the lobby of our building so that we got to just walk through traffic. Right? People were just walking through and they were like, hey, what's going on? And if anything else, they might say hi to their friends and maybe look at a flyer. And I know we got students to take religion courses just from having this kind of walk through, hey, have a piece of pizza, grab a flyer, in the lobby where there's actual foot traffic. And we did a curricular design that was really designed to ensure maximum flexibility and to allow us to stay close to the ground and respond to students' interests. And I will talk more about that in just a bit. Ongoing strategies that we're still pursuing. One of the things that we did, Co-College has the largest student-run writing center in the country. There is a culture of writing, thinking about writing, doing writing, not just creative writing, but all sorts of writing at our college. And we colonized the writing center. We started recruiting writing center consultants to take our classes, to come to events, to become majors. And once we get a couple, then their friends are like, hey, Brittany's taking that class over, with chaplain and religion, you should take it with me, or I'm going to take it with her. And all of a sudden, we have like 12 writing center consultants. And that breeds, people breed people, right? People want to be where the life is happening. And so that's an ongoing strategy that we're constantly trying to recruit writing center consultants because it's a home for talented humanists. We also do, spot and recruit. And I would say most of my time is spent in student development. Really working one-on-one with students, helping them develop their skills, helping them design projects, apply for awards, and get those biologists who have never thought about becoming a religion minor into our program. And one of the things that we have really made it a habit of in both philosophy and religion as an ongoing strategy to recruit majors and also not just majors but also bring more students into our department is to consistently every year have someone from each of our programs teaching in our first year seminar. Okay? So Co-College, like many small liberal arts colleges, has a first year seminar program. Starting this summer, I will become the new director of first year experience at Co. And that includes both the seminar and all the co-curricular cool stuff that happens over the course of the whole year. Every student at Co is required to take a first year seminar. First year seminars are supposed to be small topical seminars on any topic the faculty want to teach that engages multiple perspectives, so either multiple perspectives within a discipline or multiple perspectives from multiple disciplines, which are designed to help students improve their critical reading, critical writing, and oral communication skills. It's a very difficult course to teach, I'm not going to lie. It is a heavy burden because your faculty member of your first year seminar is also your advisor, it's your initial academic advisor. So if you teach an FYS every year that I do, you start lacking out the advisees, and because I am a good advisor, students don't want to leave, right? Where some students will flee their advisor, I just want a psych advisor, I'm out. I have a lot of advisees, and that can be a burden. The reason we do it is not just because that helps us get them while they're young, which we do want to do, but also because then we become less scary to the first year class in general, because they tell their friends, oh, I'm in that one with Christy, oh, she's great. Or, oh, yeah, we're doing this religious stuff, but it's nothing like I thought it would be like. We teach in that program every single year. We put ourselves out there into the community. And we have been demonstrating, trying to work very hard to demonstrate alumni success in multiple fields of study. We highlight them on our web. We bring them back for events. One of my former students will come and do a presentation on digital, working digitizing manuscripts. We have a student out there who was such a pain in the ass, he was my student, but he was a double major in comp sci and religion and now writes software. I think they call software, I don't know, for planes so they don't crash into the ground. So he will be coming back to talk about how his religion major helped prepare him for something. And you have to teach awesome intro level courses. That's an ongoing strategy. You have to teach awesome intro courses, spot the talented students, and then get those talented students into upper level classes as soon as possible. So rather than designing a curriculum that's a ladder, first you take this, then you take this, then you take this, we've made all of our upper level student classes have the prerequisite be one course in religion or consent to instructor. And that way we can pinpoint a student and say, Chloe, you need to take Tantra next term with Chris Hatchell. You're going to love that class. Because if a student is in a class that is challenging for them and exciting for them, they are more likely to become a major than if they are not. Because the people in that class inspire them, their colleagues in that class inspire them. So those are some of our strategies that are ongoing. We also have some new projects and strategies. One of my new projects and strategies is to develop intentional collaborations with other humanists, including the development of team talk humanities seminars. We do not have a culture of doing this at Coe College, mostly because of workload issues with team talk classes, but we are hiring a new provost/new faculty right now, and that is one of the things that a lot of them have been talking about team teaching, and that is something we will be taking there in the right way. Because, so for example, a colleague of mine in English and I have applied to co-teach a program at the Newberry Library to be associated with colleges in the Midwest. And so we've developed a whole course on travel writing in common world. And that includes pilgrimage, that includes other types of religious tourism, but it doesn't just. And we would love to co-teach that at Coe, where we could have students from English, from history, from American studies, possibly from religion, possibly from other disciplines. We are pushing right now for certain types of outcomes in general education reform. We have a very skewed general education system right now that doesn't really help us in the humanities sort of engaged students. And there's a groundswell. Our current general education program has been in place for 10 years. So there's a groundswell of now is the time. Right now is the time to teach ed reform. And we will be pushing. We will be on block as humanities faculty, honestly, pushing for certain things to happen. And sometimes you have to actually be aggressive like that in order to make sure that students can't just get out of humanities requirements by taking logic and creative writing, right? Which you could do under our current system, and I've seen it. Or logic and fundamentals of public speaking, right? So I've also seen. So we're going to be pushing for certain sorts of outcomes that will force, right, more students into the types of classes that teach the skills that we want our students to be developing, but it also gives them access to areas of knowledge that they might not have thought to access otherwise. And right now I'm working with a colleague at the library to try to develop a long-term humanities research project, possibly involving our archives, to hook students into, and then it'll be a generational project. And that also gives them really great practicum experience in working in kind of manuscript preservation, sort of digitizing the digital humanities work in library and information science that they can take with them on the market. And the most important ongoing strategy and new project, this summer I served as the chair of the Enhanced Programs Committee in our strategic planning group, and I pushed all summer long that one of our institutional priorities over the next 5 years should be to develop a center for careers in creativity. Because I think this is going to emancipate humanities majors. That humanities majors are going to benefit the most from a career center because they will be able, so many of them right now would love to major in humanities, but feel limited by this pernicious myth that there are no jobs for humanities majors. But also, that myth is very real to them because they hear it from their parents. And many of our students' parents have told them, I'm only going to pay for you to go to college if you study one of these three things. Luckily for us, we have a culture of double majoring. So we can get people who want to do art, but their parents will only pay if they go to business administration to be able to double major in business administration and art. And that actually makes them very marketable in arts administration on the market. That's a really clear and exciting career path for them that they would not have been, that they're really marketable for. Parents have bought into this myth, at least parents of our students have really bought into this myth that there are no jobs for students with certain types of majors. So we have to make what are the landscape of work and opportunity that is really actually is available to students with humanities majors like religion visible. And we have to get students hooked into the right kind of connections to that as early as possible. So that is now part of our strategic plan, which the Board of Trustees approved last week. I know that I was a pain in the ass on everybody up that summer, and I'm so excited for this because for me, we have the right people in there helping students figure out how to translate what they know and what they know how to do and what they're excited about into the world of work. That will absolutely impact our enrollment and our majors. That will come very, very quickly. Okay, I just spoke for way longer than I intended to. And I have prepared some material about curricula in particular, but I'd like to stop for a moment and hear from you guys if you guys have questions, what you're thinking, and if this resonates with you at all.
I have a question.
Good. Please.
Could you amplify a little bit more on your skepticism about the gen ed requirement in logic?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about why you don't think that's an advisable gen ed requirement.
So the reason that I think that is because of the way logic is taught. First of all, the reason that it fills gen ed and humanities right now is because it has a PHL prefix. We have an entirely prefix-based system of gen ed, which makes really no sense because not all PHL classes, not all ARIA classes, are like, right? The first premise of that is all of these are alike, and they're not. Logic is really not symbolic logic. It's basically math. There are different ways to teach logic that is not the math. The way that is taught at our school is symbolic logic, so it's really math. And in fact, in other schools, that would count for quantitative reasoning, right? And that's where it used to count at Cal before they moved a decade ago, before they moved into this prefix-based two here, two there, two here, where it doesn't make any sense anymore. And we all want creative writing to be fine art, partially because what they do in creative writing classes is of a qualitatively different kind of thing than we do in English, history, religion, philosophy, but also because we don't have art prefixes. All students are required to take one course in art, but art prefixes are art history, which would be art history, music, film studies. That's it, right? So wow, it would be so great for us to have that be an art prefix. Because what the students are doing there is producing art. Right? So that's why I'm on that. Yeah.
Can you talk about how you found a way to balance your research, your teaching, and your course development? I mean, it seems like between 16 courses...
17.
Well, I have a question about it. So.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll let you know when I find the balance. Because right now I always feel like I skew one way or the other. When you are Coe College is a teaching college, right? 3-3 level. We do not have a free 10-year sabbatical, and you're not eligible for course release unless you are involved in something specific like sharing your department or you're taking on some sort of body administrative role. So next year I'll have course release because I'm going to run for experience. But as for right now, I've never had course release. So 3-3. And again, like I said, in a small department, you can't just teach the same things all the time. Because if you teach the same things all the time, then you're not developing students. You're going nowhere. You're just sort of paddling. You're just sort of starting one. So For the first few years while I was at Co, I worked all the time. I worked all the time. I was very, very lucky. My advisor had allowed me or encouraged me even, all of my entire dissertation committee, to write my dissertation, to feel free to change the format of the original, of the other kind of dissertation, right? So I didn't have a chapter called Define the Task, right? And I didn't have a chapter that was solely literature review. That I did those things through my kind of conceived chapters. And as a result, I did not have to do much editing of my dissertation to produce it into a book, a publishable book, because it was in pretty good shape. That being said, it took a year to produce those indexes. Those indexes took forever and produced the camera-ready copy. And there were multiple times where I remember my research assistant, Laszlo, he called me and I was on vacation in a Mini Cooper convertible driving through Vermont. And he called me and he said, Zena, we can't let us use the fonts, the Greek and Hebrew fonts, because of a copyright issue on the font. And I nearly threw the phone out the window because I was like, I'm on vacation, that's the problem, right? But a year, right? And so all of my really publication kind of energy went into the production of this manuscript, and luckily the dean funded me a research assistant to help me do that. But during that year, the majority of my actual energy went into course development, went into course development. Then I got somewhat lucky. My book inspired a conference at Cardozo University School of Law, Cardozo School of Law, which is the Bishop University of New York. And so I got this invitation out of the blue. So I was like, what am I going to do next? Now that the manuscript is in, I'm not quite sure. I was totally spent from developing courses, totally spent. And I got this letter out of the blue that quoted my book back to me, which was really weird. And it was an invitation to participate in this conference in New York at Cardozo Law School. And would I like to write something and come to this conference? And I thought, I would like to do that. And that was I think that was one of the greatest experiences of my life, was when sitting in that room with 20 to 25 scholars from all across different fields of religious studies, all dealing with the thematic that I had put in front of them in my book. So I wrote, that was my kind of like, I better be amazing, I gotta be the best one in the room, right? So I worked really hard on one discrete project. And basically I've tried to have one discrete project that I'm working on per year. One discrete, and that can be a part of the project or it can be a chapter in my ongoing attempt to produce my second book, right? Which will, when I saw Henry Zabritsky at SBL this year, he said, yeah, will you be able to deliver the manuscript? And I was like, well, maybe, right? And I thought at that point that my deadline was winter 2016, or December 2016. And I thought that was really unrealistic. And then when I went home and looked at my contract back in December 2015, which as you notice is over. So I have about 3 chapters written of that book because that's what I've been doing over the summer, is working on these chapters. But last summer I had a really demoralizing experience, which is that I thought I was on to the greatest thing ever. I translated all these texts that had never been translated into English before. I was thinking about the history and why these texts were produced, and I came up with what I thought was a really original thesis, and I presented it at SBL. Went over great. Allison was there with a great paper, and then the very next day, I watched someone else do the exact same paper in a different session, and that was awful. Because when you can only do one project per year, you have got everything invested in that project. And I'm going to be very honest that since that, I have not been able to do a single speck of work on my next part of that book because I was so demoralized by this whole experience. And I mean, about 90% of our papers were identical. Over 10% that was different, and mine was better. But I had to figure out how to take that 10% and make that more like 50%. And that involves a radical rethinking of what I was doing. And his is getting published first, because his is getting published in Jess, and mine is going to be part of the book. So I'm still there. I'm still kind of feeling the actual work, right, from that. And so it's a very difficult balance. I think I'm pretty good at work-life balance. I'm pretty good. I know that in order to do my job, I need 4 hours every each day of the weekend in order to do it. But I'm pretty good at being like, I'm done now, and then just doing nothing. I also know that I do my best work in the mornings rather than the afternoons. So when I come home from work at 5, I'm not working, right? I'm done. But keeps me very, very sane. But in terms of research balance, it is not a good balance. I'm either all in on research or all in on teaching at any given time.
As a follow-up,
Yeah.
and what have been particular generative spaces that you've gone to for your course development? I mean, you've mentioned a lot of courses that
Yeah.
don't fall necessarily within your training through exams, or
You mean in terms of like what resources would I use to develop a new course?
no, more like, do you find that it's coming out of sort of inspiration as you're, I don't know, reading travel books and suddenly
Yeah.
decide this is actually a course I want to teach,
Yeah.
or how much of that is just sort of according to what you think the students now need at your school?
I think it's a combination of both of those two things. So we try to, sometimes what we think is going to be fantastic bombs, right? So some schools are very good at have students who really want to take these kind of broad comparative courses based around a theme, like food, or pilgrimage, right? Or, ritual, or whatever. And our students don't want to sign up for those courses. So my colleague Chris Hatchell developed an entire course on pilgrimage and homicide and fire. And that is terrible. Right? That is terrible. So you have to be attuned. Now, Chris now thinks if he just called that course pilgrimage in Eastern religions, he would have to be shut up. Like there's something about the titling and how you market the course can make an actually really big difference. But as a result, I'm not sitting out there like I have this idea. The NEH, the NEH has this kind of like big ideas text, right? And I have this idea to apply for one of these on textuality, right? And working with sort of different types. It's kind of hermeneutics, but not entirely hermeneutics. Working with Bible, Quran, and Constitution, right? And sort of these ways of reading, modes of interpretation. And I really think I can make a case for it. But I don't think anyone in my school is going to sign up, right? And that's actually been a problem for me. And one of the reasons I want these humanities seminars on the books is because I'm like, well, how can I get students to realize these are the kinds of things that are really awesome and matter? So you have to be really attuned to what students want, but also what they need. We have to be attuned to what we see as a whole when they're learning. For example, at Cove, the history department primarily does social history, right? So war, microhistory, kind of history of the ordinary, I guess, to a certain degree, and there's very little intellectual history. So we see part of our job, both in philosophy and religion, as filling in that gap. So philosophy has a sequence of historical classes that students are taking in the department: ancient Greek philosophy, medieval philosophy, early modern, late modern, and sometimes contemporary, but because of staffing issues, that doesn't happen that often, right? So late modern is probably the best. Yeah. Psychology used to have a course in the history of psych, and they don't anymore because they've turned really quantitative in the way that they do their curriculum. What else? Oh, physics. Finally started teaching a course called Physics, a Historical Approach. And the first time that was taught last year, I put 6 of my advices in it. Because I was like, this is a way that you can do your non-lab science requirement and still be doing intellectual history. And they loved it. That was a great course, although they really struggled with quantity, right? And I did not have them. And we in religion try to, teach these courses that really kind of fill in. So we have to teach history of Christian thought, we teach modern religious thought, we're going to develop a course in modern Jewish thought, right? We're trying to do a course in medieval Christianity, or Augustine coming up next year, Dante is big in this. So we have this, like, we're trying to fill in that gap. Because that's a need that we can't send students into the world who don't understand the effect of the Enlightenment, right, on every discourse that there is, right? So it's not really, it doesn't come from inspiration as much as really being very student-centered. In terms of the generative spaces, in terms of where I go when I'm actually, that's a different kind of question, where I go when I'm actually starting to develop courses, I go to 2 places. I look at every syllabus I can get my hands on a related course. And then I also go and I read everything I can. And one of the things that Chicago does teach you, it really does teach you this, is how to tell a quality book from a less helpful book. This is something I said this morning in my seminar. How to tell a quality book from a less helpful book. And I can usually tell that actually pretty quickly, right, when I'm reading a book. So I know, because I've read all of them, I know that Charles Lucas Introducing American Religion is the best introductory book on American religion out there. But because I know that, I then was like, I wonder if this series is equally good, right, in the other things that we introduce Chinese religion, introducing Islam. And it's not, right? It varies, right? As many series do, it varies in quality. But I've got that series on my radar now because I like the way they structure chapters, have these key points, have bibliographic resources, all these things. And they're only $40 as opposed to a nice glossy textbook that can run in front. And then I use Facebook as my crowdsource, and I call for my friends, and I say, please send me your syllabi, or you know anyone at your institution who's developed a course on the Quran translation, and can you ask them if I can take a look at their syllabus? Facebook is a wonderful, wonderful lifeline if you are not, if you're separated from your colleagues, and you're separated from that kind of inspiration that you can get just from having coffee with someone, with a virtual coffee, right after the And then in terms of actual generative spaces, I go to Panera. I work at Panera, right? Yeah.
So in the beginning, you started with some sort of like unsettling facts about recent religious studies programs and departments. And you mentioned about where you started that they wanted to know what a flourishing religious studies department or program looks like. Can you talk a little bit more about how you think, after all your experience, how the college itself would answer that question? Like, how did, like, as you're sort of building the program, like, how do they, what is the measuring of success? Like, how do you sort of prove that to them? And like, is there like a distance between what you think and what it should be versus what they are asking for?
It's a great question, and you're going to get different responses from it based on the different sectors of campus. Now, one of the things I never thought that I would have to do, I knew that I was going to have to advocate for religion and the humanities among students and parents. And I even knew I was going to have to do it maybe in front of administrators, president, the dean, board, but I never thought I was going to have to do it to other faculty. I never thought I was going to have to explain to a psychology professor why the humanities are important, why they shouldn't just have their students do a collateral major organizational science, why their students needed to have time in their schedule to take philosophy, history, or religion. And that's what really disconcerting to me, is that I feel like, at any institution, there are real, kind of everybody's in their vested interest of their own department, their own division, their own program. And there is in part a lack of appreciation amongst some for any other division. Even at a liberal arts college, even at a good solid liberal arts college like we are, there's a lack of appreciation. So I'm thinking you've got to target the people individually. I'm making real roads into physics. You can hear me say physics many times. Because the students are so good, I'm making real roads into thinking about, can we develop a cosmology class together? Can we talk about the sort of history of conflicts between, in terms of class of Curtius or Galileo, can we do this together? But I've been making very little headway into other departments where I'm just not getting anywhere. That they just don't see, like, I'm having much less traction in biology, whereas even though we have biology students who are doing religion, biologists that we have at Coke, they were like, well, no, the jobs are all in healthcare, so our student, because that's the growingest interest rate, right? The whole country is the growingest. Our jobs are all in healthcare, so our students need to do biology, and they can take some classes in, Soc, and they can take some classes in, whatever, and then they need to take health communications, and that's what they're going to do. Maybe some business administration classes too, or maybe healthcare administration. That's very difficult to crack. I'm still working on it. I don't have a good strategy for that yet. I do not have a good strategy. Now, unfortunately, we are in a situation where we are numbers driven. So I worked this summer, so in terms of my service to the college, I spent 3 years on the executive committee of the faculty, and then I was elected to the long-range planning council, and by virtue of being on the long-range planning council, I was then invited to join the strategic planning group, which was a Mellon-funded intensive summer experience. And then, because I'm seen by my colleagues as somewhat of a purist who's not going out to slash programs just because they're not that popular right now, I was then awarded the great honor of being the chair of the Enhanced Programs Committee, which was one of the strategic planning committees, and the hardest one, because that's both in programs that exist at the college already are owned by people. And so you're definitely going to make enemies, which I hope I didn't make too many. But as part of the strategic planning group, as part of my work on the long-range planning council, we created an environmental scan. An environmental scan was basically a brief overview of the various trends and pressures facing higher education, and especially colleges like Coe, small, tuition-driven, less than $100 million endowment, here endowment is $92 million or something. Right, so now we're not talking about we're not $1 billion endowment, $300 billion endowment would be like soaring to high heaven, right? Tuition-driven, you know, we're looking at some of these factors. And the fact is, I mean, the realities are quite bleak, right? So that's, you know, we have not a lot of demographic growth, right? The trend in the number of college-bound high school students in this country is flat, right? But the only demographic growth that's really expected is going to come from the Hispanic and Latino populations, which is something that really, you know, we're excited about in Iowa, but it will pose some challenges to us. And so moving forward, we have to be really thinking about creating spaces on campus for heritage speakers who want to continue with Spanish, as well as you know, working on inclusion so that people from a wide variety of backgrounds really are included, not just feel included, but are included on our campus, and that's where we come from. And most colleges nowadays are operating under this financial model, which assumes a certain number of enrollment growth every year, and that's going to not be feasible. And that includes us. We're operating on that model too. This is not sustainable. And just as the net student price is growing, the discount rate also grows. We're seeing more income stratification in terms of our student profiles. We're seeing more students be able to pay less, right? And so that's going to have a major impact on us. The value of college education outcomes, unfortunately, continues to be reflected in earnings, right? Longitudinal earnings for college graduates. And that includes majors, right? And I know that, I don't know where we are in this right now, but you know, there was this Obama plan. I love President Obama, he was my neighbor. But he had this plan a couple years ago that we're gonna like rate colleges by outcomes, by majors even. Like these majors, these outcomes, these are interested, and this was like, no, don't do it, right? Because we're buying into this language that money is the measure of good outcome, right? And that's a very dangerous thing. We also see increasingly our students are one of the social trends in the street, increasingly low levels of readiness for college, both emotionally and also academically. Students who are not supposed to be left behind have all been left behind in terms of the structure of our educational system, and with us we are having to do more and more remedial work, and that's just not us, that's colleges all across the country. And we see a rapid incline of mental health issues. Right, so all these are some key trends. And that means that when the board is sitting down and making these tough financial decisions, they want to see numbers. They want to see your numbers. They want to see how many digits per graduating per year. They want to see how many people you're enrolling. They want to see what your students are doing. And then they want to say, well, all that's great, Chesky, but you guys have a lot of money over there. Is this the best use of our resources? And so we have to be constantly being like this, right? And if you have a program that has consistently declining majors, at some point soon, someone's going to say to you, you have 3 years to get these enrollments up before we consider doing something different. And that's really sad. Now, it's not always true, because if we can keep our enrollments really good at the lower and intermediate levels, that may not ever happen. But if the trickle-down effect of low enrollments continues to fall into then the intermediate and then the intro levels, we're going to be a big trouble. We're going to have to use the press. It's radically different. Which is why we feel like we need to be on the offensive. And unfortunately for me, or fortunately for me, I don't know, I am the person in our department that is the most outgoing. And I actually am kind of an introvert in that I need all the time to shut the door and not talk to anyone. But I'm also the one who's willing to be like, listen, have you thought about being a restrainer? Do you want to talk to our event? And that's a lot of pressure there, because even though more students come into our Eastern classes than our Western classes, more majors come out of our Western classes than our Eastern classes. So this is something that I'm trying to help my co-faculty be better, a little bit more outgoing, because it's not his natural way to be so. It's a little bit more without changing who he is as a person who is lovely and lovable, right? A little more, because we have this requirement in Gen Ed pressure on courses that end with 6, which stands for not Western perspective. And so his courses are filled every term. And so we need to get more of those students to taking a second and a third course in religion. And that's been a challenge. That's been a challenge for us. So we have our own, rigorous for assessment, which the college is happy with. They like we do both quantitative and qualitative assessment in our program. But ultimately, they're looking at these numbers. I mean, I've seen the strategic indicators. Right now, one of the things I will say about us is that based on, so every college probably has a benchmark group. I'm sure Chicago has a benchmark group. We have a benchmark group. It's called the CCG, which stands for the Co-Comparison Group. And it's a list of about 30 peer institutions that are like us in certain ways, and they're rigorous process of identifying and selecting these schools. And then we benchmark ourselves against them on a number of different things. Endowment, class size, faculty-student ratio, money spent per student, right? All these sorts of things. Yield, retention rate, all these sorts of things. And the thing about benchmarkers is that you're not at the same place based on every group metric, right? So we'll be right in the middle in endowment, but we're not where we want to be in retention, right? So, or we'll be where we want to be in terms of faculty-student ratio, but we're not where we are in terms of yield, right? So you're really able to see, where you are. And I was going somewhere with this. Oh, yes. So in the strategic indicators, one of the things that the board sees, the strategic planning saw this summer, is our number of majors per discipline in comparison to the average number of major in our comparison group, right? So one of the things I can say with some pride is that even though we only have 2.5 faculty members, we're graduating the same number or a little more number of majors per year than our comparison group. This also helps me show the board that, we're actually doing pretty awesome with what we have, and we are right performing as expected, so that they don't think our numbers should be where psychology are, which will never, ever happen. So we can see, for example, that code has more psychology majors, way more than the average CCG school, and fewer than average philosophy majors, right? So we can kind of get ourselves into thinking about, okay, and one of the reasons we have the benchmark group is because we want to know, in terms of the kinds of students who are choosing, who we want, who are choosing these other schools, what are they doing compared to what our students are doing, so we can know our own student population, our institutional, and thus, market accordingly, but also be able to attract more of maybe the kinds of students we want but are not getting. So that's really important. So, unfortunately, the board will measure outcomes by numbers. The good news is that our college president, who I just think is fantastic. He is a real believer in philosophy and religion. And that's fantastic. And he has told me, you guys are the heart of the institution, we're the heart of our mission, and all of that is great, but we don't always say that to every other time. So you never really know, is that right? But I believe what he tells me, that he feels like what we do is central to our mission, and in that way kind of validates our place. We're also a Presbyterian school, and that will not only nominally and only historically. We're not really in any sort of real relationship with Presbyterian churches. But one of the things that I am starting to do, in response to the cuts, in response to the discourse of around the humanities, I read the ADR has some really great resources on their website. So, and one of the resources they have a publication about, sort of the religious studies major in the face of budget cuts that came out in 2009. And it was a conversation between 3 faculty members and institutions like University of Florida, and I don't remember the others, where the religion program was threatening to be cut. And one of the faculty members, who's the chair of the GA Studies Department at University of Florida, said every religion program in the country should develop a first aid kit, which is a list of all of the most important contacts and external institutions, whether they be other institutions of higher learning, whether they be like your college consortium, for us we would have Presbyterian institutions on this list, who you can reach out to for assistance and support if you feel like your program is being threatened. And that is very good advice, right? So that's what we're developing right now. Not that we think we need it, but we want to be prepared. You don't have to build that on the fly. So last year when Buena Vista cut their philosophy and religion, we had a strategy meeting, because I remember I was at the strategic planning group in one of my committee meetings, and David Hayes, who's our vice president of development, was like, this will just cut 5 programs. And I was like, which ones? He says, you don't want to know. Right? Because they did not want to know. What they did was cut lots of religion. And then, so we reached out to the chair, who had not been fired, but had been reallocated, right? And started working with them to see if any of their students needed a place to finish their majors, right? And that's the kind of triage, that we can do. But we wrote to the EPA, we wrote, well, I'm gonna listen, I'm a tenure graduate faculty, I have a really strong profile, I made a university, I would have totally helped with the Presbyterian Church. Right, and I sort of got that mindset of if I need to, I will raise totally help, and that is a healthy effort. Now, I don't think I need to, but I am concerned because we are hiring a new dean and provost, which is the same. We normally had a vice president for academic affairs and dean of the faculty, the same, and now we're having a provost and dean of the faculty, and that's in order to make it clear what the hierarchy is of the school, that it goes president, provost, and then a different person rather than the other way. Anyway, so several of the provost candidates have come from schools where they've done a lot of cutting. I know leadership. Now, leadership is good, right? If you don't bring that with you if you bring with you a goal like, I don't want to cut, leadership, but if you are making your reputation on being an efficient consolidator of programs, I want it. So, that's where we're going. That was a very long answer to your question. Yes?
So, in light of all of that, how do you pitch potential majors or potential minors? So you've recognized this star in the intro classes, the 200 classes. How then you get them into your office and you should be the religion major, you should apply.
Well, it's really easy to get people into my office because they're all scared of me. So when it's just people like, hey, drop by my office, they will be there within 10 minutes. You have some sort of dual ways. You have to know your audience is the first one. So find out more about them. What are you studying here, what are you hoping to do in the future? Are you looking at going maybe for a Fulbright? Co's one of the top Fulbright producers of Fulbrights in the country. We have a lot of students who have done Fulbrights or are doing Fulbrights. Are you looking to maybe do a Fulbright? Are you thinking about working sort of what kind of industry? Are you working abroad? You really have to know them. And then be like, is this your first class? And you have me, what made you choose this class? And sort of see where they are. So there's a lot of questions, right? And you may not be able to make the strong pitch in the first meeting, right? You have to fail. You have to sell, right? You have to make the hook, right? You can say to a student, it seems to me that you're really good at X. I might even help you get even better at X. You might consider taking name-specific class here when I teach it again in the fall. Right? Name-specific classes. So I had a student who was a double major in econ and math, and he doesn't have time to attend whether you're a religion major or minor. He just doesn't have time. Econ and math. He just becomes so good at reading texts. And I could talk to him about you are so good at this, and I feel like in your program you're not having any other opportunities to do this. Can you carve out any time to take any more religion classes? It would be such a shame, if you weren't able to really get this out of your liberal arts experience. So I'll see him back in Judaism as well. That's how you can do it. And it doesn't matter that he's not going to become a major or minor, because you made a difference in that person's life, and he is also re-enrolling, so you have the opportunity to work with somebody to get them even further along. So you have to have also dual rationales for people. You have to know identify who you're talking to. Some people want to see statistics over time, like the board, right? The board of trustees, or they want to see statistics over time. And there are a lot of good statistics over time, longitudinal studies you can get. Like the National Humanities Alliance has a longitudinal study about humanists and their earning potential over time. AAR is doing the Teagle survey, which is measuring the long-term success of religious studies majors over time, not only in terms of earning potential, but that is one of the major metrics, and you can access that on their website at AAR. But you don't want to translate everything into the frame of consumerism or careerism also, because that's not going to work for every student. So we kind of go back and forth between this kind of utilitarian argument that you can have using for religion. We will teach you how to become better at all the things that employers are looking for. Right? Reading, breaking down problems into its component parts, building an argument for fairness, being able to have information literacy, sort out reliable information from unreliable information, produce a long-form project that shows people work independently. All of these things are skills that employers say they want and that we do really well in our department. We have so we don't want to become the part of religion in question. And the other argument kind of goes more towards the social problems argument, like it eschews that language of utilitarianism to talk about how the problems of today can only be solved by taking the long view, by having this interdisciplinary knowledge, by having this historical knowledge, by being able to engage seriously with the ideas and opinions of people under review. But those terms also get really plastic because every discipline says that they do that. So it's a constant struggle to find the right language to pitch, but you have to know who you're pitching to first. So again, kind of an abstract way of answering your question. Of course. Yes.
Someone else who has that.
I want to hear you talk a little more about religion in relation to humanity.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
In a couple of respects, sometimes we have people come in, and I have a feeling that their sense is that religion serves humanity to feel par excellence. And if there is a move towards centrality, that religion will fare well in that because it touches on so many people. And there are other people I hear who have the opposite view, that religion is, in some sense, less well understood, more marginalized, as we argued from university. And I have the feeling, but I want to hear you say more, that you're more in the latter.
In the latter.
I just wonder if you could say a little bit about that. And the judge's interest,
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I don't know. First of all, I think that personally, while I may feel that religion is at the center of humanity, engaging with fields and disciplines like literature, analysis, historical studies, anthropological investigation, art history, material culture, library information science, other people just don't see it that way. Certainly the people at my institution don't see it that way. I think yeah, but they don't see it that way. They see, okay, if we just had English and history, we're good. Let's have English and history, we're good. Maybe they keep philosophy around for ethics. There are some people who really think humanities means English, history, and maybe some ethics. Right? That's what our students want, that's what they need, that's what we can afford to have. Right? So I do feel like religion, because there isn't as clear, or we haven't done as good of a job as we need to at showing people the paths to meaningful, sustained employment, not just graduate school, right? There isn't a clear career path that students can be like, if I go into religion, I can do X. They think there is, and they think that path goes religion, clergy, right? And we all know that that's not where the path goes. It goes that way for a minuscule number of people, not the majority of people. So we have to constantly be convincing people that that's not the path, right? And some people don't like to do this because they're like, well, we shouldn't be having to think about careers, and it's like against the liberal arts, and just love of learning, and all that is bullshit. Our students come in, their parents want to know about careers, they want to know about careers, and careers are good. Like, I have a meaningful career that matters to me. If I thought I was going into something without a meaningful career into it, I would be attacked. It's my life, right? So we have to do a really strong job of showing people, here's a path that students took into becoming a social media marketer for the Strength of Strong New York City, which one of our students said. Here's a path that students took into becoming a volunteer coordinator for Habitat for Humanity, right? We have to do that. And so every successful religion department needs to have an actual answer, or faculty member teaching religion needs to have an actual answer to the question of what can I do with that? And what's more for religion than others? I think English people think, okay, well, you can go into media of some sort. You could do publishing all over the You could become a blogger. You could write for a journal. Again, this jobs are all going away. You could work for a literary agency. You could work in advertising. You could work in the field of health communications. Like, there seems to be a kind of path. Historians, a lot of them teach secondary education. That's where they're going. They want to be high school history teachers, or they want to work in museums, or they want to work in archives, or they at law school or wherever. Sometimes I joke with philosophers that they become the pre-law department, but I do think a lot of philosophy students find that they're in law school, right? It's so hard, by the way, we have a lot of really successful religion law school. But it doesn't seem clear to people, because like, if you're in this mind of you get a credential in something that prepares you for something else, coming in with that generational mindset, then what is that for religion? You can become a Sunday school teacher, or you can become a nuns, right? And our kids don't really want to become nuns, right? That's not the body we have. So we have to really sell it, and that's why I think also the young faculty, that they don't see those outcomes either. They don't see those outcomes either. Has that been your experience, Ed, do you think? Yeah. Let me talk a little bit about, do you mind, am I still allowed to talk, or are you all sick of me already? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I was going
We're going to shoot. We have about 35.
Well, I don't want to keep you guys, we don't want, but I did prepare a sort of sample of different kinds of religion curricula that are out there that I thought you might want to take a look at. So please go ahead and pass. Feel free to leave if you are with me, that's fine. I'm not. So I put together, and this is a group of schools that I chose. Some of them are on our comparison group, others are not. This is focused on liberal arts colleges because that's what I know. So I wanted to show you on the front page there's a comparison, not just in terms of curriculum, but also in terms of quote websites about using Swarthmore, which is in some ways the dream, okay? And Albion, which is in some ways the reality, right? Not that reality, just the reality. So Swarthmore College and Albion College are very similar in terms of the numbers, in terms of enrollment numbers, and not totally dissimilar in terms of the faculty ratio, but there's a huge difference between 8 to 1 and 11 to 1 student to faculty ratio. Swarthmore is ranked number 3 in the country by U.S. News and World Report. They have an acceptance rate of 17%. Many of the students who apply to the University of Chicago are also looking at Swarthmore. Okay? But Albion is ranked close to where we are, around 100 by U.S. News and World Report, and they have an acceptance rate of 60.8%, which is similar to ours. I think we're at 57.3 or 55.7 or something like that. When I did tell you the number of faculty that each of these institutions has, Swarthmore has 7 full-time faculty member in religion, and Albion has 4. But one is the associate provost, which leads me to believe he doesn't teach that much of religion. And then they have 1 adjunct and 1 someone called a research affiliate, and I'm not sure what that means. Probably teaches 1 course a semester. One of the things that really struck out to me about how lucky Swarthmore is how much they highlight on their webpage the department's role in the college culture. And if you look, you might notice that they highlight the fact that nearly 1/3 of the student body takes a course in religion every year. Oh my gosh, right? The 500 kids in religion classes every year. And over 40 students in the junior and senior classes choose to major or minor in religion. Wow, that's amazing. Now what you can notice, if you see that I give you a little bit of breakdown, they've decided that you don't need a gateway course in religion, that you can come to the department and the program through a multitude of entry points. So high flexibility, right? You have to take 8 courses in religion, including the senior symposium, and up to 3 courses listed cross-listed courses not as in the major can count. But you have to choose them with an advisor. 2 courses in language can count. So that means up to 5 courses outside of the department can count towards their major, which you can only do if you have a culture of students taking classes in your department. You can't do that if you don't have that culture, because you will never have students. You have to apply into the major. There are no prereqs. There are no breadth or depth requirements. And the bottom line is just take a bunch of courses, select the individuals that they have. That you can really do when you have the culture that supports that. But if you look at what Albion has, first of all, what they highlight on their website is like, hey, no one wants to come study religion when they get here, but people do because it's awesome, right? Fascination. And then they talk about the careers. Practical payoffs, right? And I don't actually think what they've done is as good as what others have done, but they're really highlighting this. And you'll see that their curriculum is far more structured, right? So you have 8 courses in religion, including 2 intro courses per breadth, 1 course in each of 4 areas, which are biblical and Jewish studies, theology and ethics, Asian and comparative religions, and Islamic religion. So again, it's breadth, right? And 2 other courses, no more than 4 100-level courses. So they have no capstone. It's not structured with prereqs, and there's no depth requirements, which we would not do, right? We want advanced coursework. But it is, the bottom line is to make sure you know things about the traditions. And that's really what they are focused on. Now, if you look at us, we're on the second page. 35 students, 12 to 1 faculty ratio, we are ranked 116. We would really like to be in the top 100. That is a goal that we are aiming towards as a college. Yeah? Our acceptance rate is 59.3. I wrote what it says on our website, so by all means you can read it for yourself. One of the things that we really highlighted is this idea of joining a community of students and professors. We feel like a lot of students are kind of looking for a home, and if we can sort of give them a home, that would be really useful for them. We expanded our religion major from 9 courses to 10 courses. And we are really concerned about breadth requirements and depth requirements. So you have to take 1 or 2 introductory courses, which we have one called Belief and Unbelief, which is philosophy of religion, basically, and the other which is called Intro to Religion, which all of us hate teaching because we have the worst students in that class, but it's virtual, basically. The text is virtual. You have to take Western religions and you have to take Eastern religions. And actually, either one of us will waive that requirement if you take 2 individual tradition classes. So if a student takes with me Islam and Judaism, they don't have to take Western. If the student takes with Korean religions of China and Buddhism, they don't have to take Eastern. Right? Well, so we'll be flexible on that. You have to take 1 course in biblical because that's my specialty, right? It used to be 2 before I got there, and so we don't even have to be 1. And 1 course in Asian religions because that's Chris's specialty. You have to play your tricks, or you have to play what you do. And then you have to take 5 additional courses, 3 of which must be at the 300 level. Now, we don't have a capstone. We have gone back and forth on whether we want to have a capstone. And we know that it would be good to have a capstone, but that would reduce our curricular flexibility because one of us would have to teach it every year. And then also, we would be totally at the whim of whatever number of students we have that year. And the philosophy department has a capstone that they hate. They hate their capstone. They're very disappointed with it. They do not like teaching it. And so they're actually thinking of going more towards our model. So right now we're not having a capstone. Although there are certain courses, like I teach this course in theory of methods. It's called Research in Religion. It's theory of methods, and then they also do full research project. They kind of serve as a capstone, but that's not explicitly. The bottom line for us is that there's a concerted effort to establish this community of engaged students based in the department and to give students as much choice as possible. But if you look at what's to the left, right, Lake Forest has taken a totally different strategy. First of all, you'll notice that they, on their website, are highlighting what people would double major. Look, our district majors have also doubled in econ and international relations and politics. They've actually done this instead of spending as much time as I think they could have on careers. So that's a weird choice, in my opinion. Their curriculum actually is the only curriculum that I've seen this in so far, but I think we're heading in this direction. Their curriculum requires you to take 2 courses outside of religion, with significant religion content at the 200 or 300 level. And now, when I first saw that, I was like, this is such an intersection, this is fantastic. And now I know what that means, which is they're cutting back the line. They're trying to make this as economically viable as possible. And that is bad. I mean, it's not bad. It's what they have to do. But if you are doing deliberative intersection, be prepared that that can be the unintended consequence of that. But this comes at a possible course of cohort interaction. If you're only taking 6 courses within the department, the capstone is independent study. But just for your own friend, feelings, I put Chicago next to Northwestern on that. And it's not meant to, for you to think like, who's better, right? And Northwestern is bigger, right? Obviously, the University of Chicago, they don't have the liberal arts tour like we have here. I say we because I still consider myself to be at least eventually part of this community. But they're very similar in terms of if you have a student who's looking at colleges, they're probably looking at both Chicago and Northwestern. Now, Northwestern's doing something very innovative. They just did this. They have this sort of normal or standard religion major, this 12 courses in religious studies, but they've just added another option. And instead of doing the above, students can opt for one of 3 interdisciplinary concentrations, which are either religion, health, and medicine, religion, law, and politics, and religion, sexuality, and gender, instead of doing the standard religious studies model. And that still makes them actually them connected to the department because they're still taking 9 courses in the department and a capstone in the department. But they're also taking 2, this one is religion and health and medicine, 2 courses in the School of Public Health, right? And this is going to be super attractive to students. really attractive. Plus, it's going to bring really cool people into the department who would benefit from being in religion. This is something that I'm just like, oh, we should do this. We should have this kind of relationship with one of our pre-op programs. Whereas you guys in Chicago, right, have actually so much freedom, right? There's so many that so you have this amazing cross-blended culture that it creates this real flexibility and allows you to bring in students from across the campus, but it comes at the expense, I think, of a cohort interaction, consistent interaction with a cohort of other active peers, because so many courses come from all over the campus community. Now, I think it's fantastic that you have the gateway course, that you have the methods approach, and that you have this 2-quarter senior capstone. But because then they're spending so much time outside of the campus, I would be wondering whether or not they have any interaction with each other for the next capstone. That would be something that I would be thinking about. Very flexible, lots of opportunities for individualization, easily paired with other programs. So this is for you guys to be thinking about the different kinds of strategies that other schools have put together. Are you guys, where are you in your program? Are you still in the sort of writing stage, the taking classes stage, or the heading out onto the market stage? Where are people? All over the place?
There is coffee available. There's coffee and tea, so help yourself.
I encourage you to be really thinking about these kinds of issues before you write job applications. I think that having demonstrated awareness of the different kinds of college environments and institutional understanding and the willingness to engage certain key programs like that institution like Oprah is going to get you that first reference. Yeah,
I think this is, it's not actually a question, it's a comment. This handout is incredibly helpful because it's like a snapshot of, and the way you highlighted cohort creation, delivered intersection, where you go look at the Price website now.
You can maybe use that as
that's really, really
a little
helpful.
shorthand. I mean, there are other strategies that people are employing. So groups really vary. So like I gave you the Oberlin one, which I think is very complicated, honestly. But they can really support that at Oberlin because they have so much faculty and they have a culture of religion as a centerpiece of their institution. It's a very complicated program. They have these areas and they have these subfields within areas. They have plans for the major. It's very complicated. But there are ways in which you can group things that can still be structured and it doesn't have to just be Abrahamic Asian, although that's the way we use it in our school for convenience, honestly. But you can still get that kind of interesting grouping and ensure a certain kind of breadth. There are lots of, every single school in the country, like your front door is now your webpage, right? Like that's your curb. You have to, every institution in the country will be very explicit about their programs. So one of the things I noticed, and the reason I now know that the Lake Forest is doing this probably more out of economic necessity than anything else, is that I took around all the other programs and know the programs doing this intersection. And so I'm like, this is economic necessity. They have 2 faculty and 5 part-time faculty at Lake Forest right now. I would be very concerned if I was a member of this department right now. Lake Forest is a great school. I've had colleagues come out of there, taught there. They're doing really exciting stuff in Asian studies and languages. That is really cool. And they're part of our consortium, which is the Associated Colleges of the Midwest, to our students. So I've had the opportunity to meet some of their students who come to Coast for things, etc. And they're great students. But to me, when you start pulling courses out of the department, it's usually motivated by economic realities. The real red flag here, and this is something that I didn't even notice, I didn't have on my radar until I was doing this, is the New Wittenberg, which is a school that actually is, I have a lot of respect for in many ways. They're bigger than us at 1948, but that's closer to where Coe wants to be at 1700, right? So they have 13 to 1 faculty ratio. They are falling on the list. They're at 148, they used to be higher. They are currently running an acceptance rate of 91.4%. That is a total red flag. That means their admissions operation is not a quality operation, but it also means they're having to scrimp and scrounge for every single student they can, which probably means they cannot be choosy and they're letting people below lower standards than where they would like them to be. Which means that the college is faculty are probably feeling it when we're very demoralized right now. This is so much of a red flag that I Because Wittenberg is right above us in terms of endowment, and right below us on another one of our benchmarking things, like I emailed our president and our director of our special assistant for retention and enrollment, and I said, is one of our comparison schools in trouble? I said, here's what I found out. And the president wrote back and sort of gave me some insider things because he had been the vice president at Allegheny College. So he said, this is really shocking. This is much lower than it used to be. This is really red flag. So you might, if you have the luxury, like I did, of getting to choose between multiple job offers, you might check out some of these things and try to look for some red flags too. Because you don't want to be at a school if you can avoid it. That is in the middle of a morality crisis or moral crisis, not a morality crisis. Moral morality crisis, or is big real problems with enrollment management. Now, probably those schools aren't hiring, right? Those schools, but you can also see this evaporate. Where is it going? Is it going up? Is it going down? And those are really useful bits of information to have with you. Yes, Alex.
I have another question. How do you guys do your faculty page on the website?
Yeah.
Like, since you're talking about doing individual connection with students and getting them to feel like part of a community, have you planned the faculty profile?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now there are some videos of us actually talking. So there, if you go to the Coe College Department of Philosophy and Religion website, in the home you'll have my partner chair talking. He's very attractive, and he kind of looks like a Jimmy Stewart character. He's very attractive. So he's really like he's kind of like, well, who's that, right? And then if you click on religion, it's big, right? So we have some videos on our webpage. Not every department does that. And we haven't done much beyond that in terms of faculty, but we do write a departmental newsletter every year, which we post on our website that highlights all the cool stuff that faculty, recent alums, and current majors are doing in the department. And our alumni read it, and they're like, oh my God, we didn't know! They'll send emails, and that's really cool. So that's what we've done, but on the actual page itself, which shows the links to our CDs and our certified, we haven't, everybody can still have the autonomy to kind of do what they want to do. But we do have those videos that I think are pretty useful on us. Our website needs a total redesign, not my department, the entire college's website needs a redesign. That's going to be strategic priority for us moving forward. Yes?
So is there anything that you did while you were here at the Divinity School or prior to the job market that prepared you for processing and dealing with all the information that you presented here today? I thought only about any of these things in the abstract of abstract and the future of teachers. Is there even concrete you can go, oh, I did something like that back before? Trial by fire?
I'm trying to think, Ed. What do you think? I don't think so. Maybe?
I felt great.
That's true. The writing on is I taught outside of the University of Chicago for 4 years. I taught at this university. I taught students who ran the gamut in terms of academic preparation. Because I had a half-time appointment 1 year, I went to all faculty meetings and I listened. And I also went to all the department meetings and I listened. And I'm not that great at listening. I'm really good at talking. But I listened hard, right? So I could hear, what kinds of questions were being asked, what kinds of things the dean was saying at these faculty meetings, what kinds of factions seem to be forming around the faculty. That is useful information. Even if you can't do anything with that information immediately, that is background information that you have. I talk to everybody, and at my friends at other institutions. Some of them seem to have dream jobs that are not dream jobs. And some of them seem to have less than basic jobs that are wonderful. And I really listen to what they're telling me about what their institutions are doing. And I, listened to, I don't think I did. I think you just have to kind of trial by fire a little bit. The good news is that, I read a lot of Chronicle articles. I did do that. I read a bunch of Chronicle articles. Now we have Inside Higher Ed too, which I don't know if you guys know. So I keep these things on my radar. When I was here, I'm not sure that we had Twitter or anything, but it's very easy right now to follow stuff on Twitter, and then you have these things in your feed, so that if you have some time to read an article about the crazy stuff that's happening at Wartburg, or how, what's going on at Oberlin this week, or whatever, you can see it. And the best way to be valued right? So I listened a lot. And I will make a point of allowing myself, I say this very deliberately, allowing myself to be elected to committees where I would have access to information, right? So I was appointed first to the executive committee for a one-year term because they were specifically working on issues related to tenure and promotion process and wanted the junior faculty representative to be elected to be elected. But then people said, can we elect you? Would you accept a nomination? Because junior faculty serving on these big campus communities are very visible, right? Would you accept a nomination? And I said, okay. Because I felt very comfortable in my department. I knew my department loved me, and I was like, fine. And so I allowed myself to be elected to the executive committee where I got an education in certain types of things. And then I allowed myself to be elected to the long-term planning council where I got an education in certain types of things. And then I did the strategic planning group. I haven't had the chance yet. The Associated College Student Rest runs something called the Institute for College Futures, which is like a little boot camp about financial issues in higher education. And I haven't been able to go, but that's something I would like to do, is to go on one of these. So that, I feel like I got an education about that in strategic planning, but I wasn't even better education about the financial, what it takes to run an institution, because I've never sat in the budget committee. And now, in my role as income and customer experience director, now I manage a quite substantial budget, right? So I really like to become very fluent with budgetary issues, including who pays for what at the college, and what programs, if we're not careful, are just going to suddenly vanish because someone's budget got cut and no one thought we would consequences, right? So I'm doing a lot of this, on my own. That being said, I have really good mentors, right, at the college. I also am very good at spotting who would not be a good mentor. That's something you really need to also think about. Just because someone offers to mentor you does not mean you want to be mentored by that person. You don't know that necessarily. You're going to have to talk to your department about these things. But sometimes a mentor can mentor you incorrectly, or mentor you down a path that is not good, right? So no, I think I really have to work a lot by myself. Or not by myself, but on the job. Yeah.
Could you just, you did mention something about teaching on this Asian religion.
Yes.
How special studies courses, who's taking them, are you speaking specialists to these traditions, and what's usually the proportions remain the same?
That's a great question. So in my department, the two full-time faculty members break down on this classic Oriental-Occidental-like axis, right? So I am sort of the primary person in Abrahamic tradition, and then in Asian religions, we have Chris Hatchell. He is a trained scholar of Tibetan Buddhism and Bon. He reads multiple languages, Tibetan, Sanskrit, and he is an active and engaged translator. Also, he is very cool. He teaches a survey course in Eastern religions almost every semester, right? It's a really popular course on our campus. Everybody wants to take it. Then he also teaches a kind of spectrum of tradition courses at the what we call 100 level. So Buddhism, Hinduism, religions of China. Then he teaches intermediate courses in Taoism and Zen Buddhism. And then he teaches advanced courses in Tibetan Buddhist culture and Tantra. So that's his kind of profile of teaching right now. He's also taught first-year seminars several times on Germany and the West, right? And he has this great way of pitching it to students. He says, do you like manga? Then you might like Journey to the West. And he gets very nervous because they don't like manga, and they do like Journey to the West. Do you like manga? You might like Journey to the West. And so that's where he is right now. He's the only person at the college who is specialized in Asian religions. And though his primary specialty is in Buddhism, he has coursework that prepare him to teach a wide variety of Asian religions, and also, like all of us do, is an autodidact. He came out of a liberal arts college, went to Columbia, right? So he had broad exposure, and then he went to Virginia, where he was trained. We also have a program in Asian studies, for which many of the courses count towards major Asian studies. But that program is supplemented by language instruction that we offer in Japanese at CO, as well as courses in Asian history, taught through the history department, and sometimes selected courses in anthropology, depending on the availability of instructors. So we have an instructor who can't teach for us all the time. It's actually Chris's partner, and she's an anthropologist who specializes in India, right? So when she's able to, she's a working anthropologist. She works for applied anthropology with the University of Iowa College of Medicine. She's able to come in and teach courses on, sort of certain types of aspects of Indian evolution, right, through anthropology, which is great. And then we send students abroad. So Code runs a ton of abroad programs, and that's the way that our students are really able to supplement what they can do in such a small environment on a more, extensive scale. So we have program exchanges with Waseda University and also with Nagoya in Japan. We have a program in South Korea. We have a program through the ACM in Shanghai. We have a program in Pune. So we have these programs, and we actively, Asian Studies requires students to go on an abroad program. One program that we have that's really unique to cover something called Asia Term, which was designed by a faculty member who takes a group for a semester through Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, for a semester. And they learn Thai, and they teach English basically, and they do a research project, and they do some field work stuff. That is such a popular program at Coe College, and the leader is retiring. And so part of my goal on strategic planning this summer was to be like, who's going to run Asia Term? We need to keep this as a distinctive program for us. And we also run programs domestically. Not everybody can go abroad. We have a program in DC Term that we send students on. We're really interested in the intersection of religion and politics, or what I call lobbying, or in public policy. And we also have a program here at the Newberry, which is an intensive research seminar in the humanities, where students get work at the Newberry in different jobs in the collections, and also design a project based in the collections. And we have a New York Term program that's based on the arts. So we have, we're sending them out. But that's kind of how it breaks down in terms of the curriculum. Like I said, Chris and I got really excited about teaching this course in Pilgrimage. I know I'm excited. I know it's so bad. I'm trying to convince him to put it back on the schedule, because I think now we're in a better place to offer it. Now, he's got more representation on campus, more students are kind of interested in travel. I'm trying to put it back on the schedule, but he doesn't want to get burned again, so we'll see. Yes?
I'm wondering, sort of comparing your experience in liberal arts education and sort of research university context, sort of your emphasis on student development and creating a sense of community, some of the other strategies you've laid out. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about how applicable you think it would be in the research university setting, and how that might be different just from where you stand.
It's a great question. So, it also depends on what research university you're at, right? Because some research universities are still the premier places to go, right, in the country, Michigan, Illinois, Urbana, Champaign, Wisconsin, Oklahoma City. These places where they have really thriving programs, where there's so much going on, there's so many students enrolled, they've got graduate programs in these areas, there's a lot of and then there are programs like Iowa, which is seen, I was in some trouble in terms of these board regions, but Iowa has seen a different way in terms of resource allocation, so that that TAs are only offered to classes that enroll certain numbers, right? And as a result, they don't have that money to offer their graduate students, right? Because their graduate students can't be TAs or teaching fellows or whatever they call them there. And so what they're seeing that means is that means a reduction in the number of graduate students who they can accept or who will accept them, right? And that's going to have a trickle-down effect, right? Because that's going to mean fewer sections of things being taught, which is going to mean fewer numbers, which is going to mean fewer students being taught, right? So even at a research institution, getting people in a major, putting your major front and center as a lively part of the campus community, advocating for your little corner of the world is vital to everybody, is still going to be, all of these things are going to be totally applicable. That being said, then you have the publication balance. Now, I've been able to I've published one book and 5 articles, basically, since coming ago. I've done a lot of lecturing as well, so I feel like I'm still really active in the field, even though I'd love to have my sabbatical, which I should be taking next year, but because I decided to become director of first-year experience, I'm going to the year after to work, right? But at a research institution, you're going to live and die, at least in part, by your publication record. And so there's so much pressure for that that you're going to be also asked to do everything, and this is going to be a constant battle. And both of them are going to be equally important, because if your department gets cut, you're not getting tenure anyway. Or if they decide the department, see, here's something I learned while I was on the executive committee. Everyone's tenured into a department, even at a liberal arts college, you're tenured into a department. And this is done so that if the school faces certain financial exigencies and they need to cut a department, they just cut you and you're fine. They didn't get rid of you, they don't have to fire you for cost. One of the things that, so I asked a question to the executive committee, because again, we were talking about tenure and promotion. And I asked a question, well, I'm in a joint department of philosophy and religion. If they wanted to cut me, if they wanted to cut religion, would they also have to cut philosophy? Right? So this is a good question. I'm tenured not into religion, I'm tenured into philosophy and religion. So would they have to cut philosophy in order to cut religion? And the answer is not only no, but they could, there's room in the legal whatever, they could decide to just change the focus of the religion department so that all we do is something that is not allowed. Now they're not going to do that, I hope, right? Because I think they think I value a member of the college community and value what I bring to the college community, my classes. But that means that an institution like a University of Iowa can suddenly decide, you know what, we can't put all of our resources into all of these different fields of religious studies. We have to put our resources into modern whatever, or this region whatever, or ancient whatever. And therefore, all these faculty who are in these other fields, sub-disciplines within religious studies, are on top of all of that. That's another thing you're going to have to do for yourself for research institution. You don't have to do one. You have to advocate for your own little subfields placed in the wider field of religious studies. I'm trying not to scare you too much.
We're
I'm sorry, yes.
No, you're sorry.